A CBC color presentation.
The fall of the Batista regime at Moncada in 1959 was only the beginning for the Cubans. But what do you do with a revolution once it's yours? The answer, as far as the victors were concerned, was to free the people from underdevelopment, both economic and psychological. The 21st century man, according to Che Guevara, the martyr and the hero of Moncada, was to be a unique human being, specific and named. His individuality was not to be suppressed by the state, but at the same time, he was not to be allowed to forget his fellow man. What this meant for the artists and intellectuals was made clear in a statement by Prime Minister Fidel Castro. He said that the artist, even if he was not directly revolutionary, must have a place in which he could work and create freely. But the revolution, he said, must struggle in all ways so that the artist creates for the people, that the people, in turn, raise their cultural level and draw nearer to the artist. If that statement means that the arts must be very realistic and chock full of direct social comment, then artists in Cuba have largely ignored the message. Inspiration to create isn't given and taken away by politicians. However, there is definitely a change. The outward-looking framework reflects itself in a new energy and spirit among artists. They are looking inside Cuba for new themes instead of deriving them from everywhere else. The arts and artists are supported by the state and administered by the National Cultural Council. What the artist gives in return is his creative expression and sometimes his labor. The National Modern Ballet Company spends 45 days each year cutting sugarcane. An even greater part of the year is spent performing and teaching in the remote provinces of Cuba. This new kind of family that is created lives with other dancers and musicians in a campamento near the sugarcane field. The dancers claim the work keeps the body in top physical condition and warmed up naturally. They are ready for training at the end of the day. Writers and filmmakers also spend time in the sugarcane harvest or working at a job that applies directly or indirectly to their art. Why should a writer be allowed the luxury of having only other intellectuals as the content of his experience?
I feel part of the whole. I would say, let's say, the difference from the past and the present, no? That I feel part of a society now. That I feel embraced, and embraced means sometimes that you might even be suffocated, but you're embraced. You're not isolated from society. Before the revolution, I was more or less existentialist. I felt like, say, what Beckett said, no, you're alive, there's no cure for that. Today I feel that there's something beyond me, something that can be, you can strive towards, something that can be achieved as an ideal.
What is your purpose as a revolutionary writer?
I would like each individual in this revolution to feel that the revolution is his and he's part of it, not to feel strange within the revolution, not to feel alienated, that he is in the center of his own world.
How does this tie in then with the altruistic ideas of a socialist society?
Well, I think that we enrich in each other, no? By being experiencing and thinking and developing as fully as we can. I would say that I have an advantage because of education, because I'm dedicated to a certain specific profession. No? I believe that my individuality is vital. I think there's a relationship between my individuality and the environment, and that it is the balance between these two forces that is important, no? And the sense of responsibility, no? Which is important. My sense of freedom is, let's say, to be free is to do what is right, to be useful.
Is that really free?
I think that that's the true freedom, because if you have absolute freedom, you're useless. I believe that, let's say, within the capitalist society, freedom is in direct relationship to whether it's harmless or effective. As the moment a writer can become effective on society, then there's censorship.
Is it possible to be dangerous in a socialist society?
Well, I think that this thing about threat is being overrated. I don't think a writer is dangerous in society. I think that people who do not criticize the revolution, who are not critical, I would say, not criticize, and criticize, yes, in the sense of saying what's right and wrong, are not fully revolutionaries because they're afraid. Maybe they're afraid if they say something, they will get into trouble. And I think that if you really believe in the revolution, you have to take whatever risks are necessary, even if saying something at a given moment, those who, let's say, who represent the revolution in every specific area, you might disagree with them. But within the revolution, these things are discussed, no? And should be overcome. And if they're not overcome, it's a pity.
Do you think that people in general will ever really understand what, for instance, your concept of revolution is?
Well, I think that there are different levels of ways of understanding. I would say I could understand it and present it to you intellectually. I think that, let's say, in an underdeveloped country like you, if people understand the revolution emotionally, viscerally.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, they don't formulate it intellectually in ideas, but they feel it and they participate. And maybe they are living a fuller life and not aware of it. That could also take place. I would say that even the counter-revolutionaries that had to leave the country are living a fuller life. Let's say a lady of the upper middle class that spend her life here going to movies, having tea parties or the equivalent of them, and playing canasta. Now she has been taken to Miami. She has to sell clothes in a department store. I think that she at least is experiencing something different. And she's being shocked by reality in a way that I would say is a richer life. But if you ask her, she would rather be here with all her living in a house like this.
You wrote a book called Memories of Underdevelopment. What did you mean by underdevelopment?
Well, underdevelopment more on the psychological level than on the economic level. Well, I think that the book is a part of myself. I come from a middle-class background, and I was dealing with part of myself. And there are two characters in the book, the revolution and this middle-class businessman. And he feels at the beginning, beyond the revolution, above it, he understands it, he can analyze it, but emotionally he can't cope with it. And at the end, he feels destroyed by it because he can't face it. He's not willing to take the risks necessary in overcoming underdevelopment. But he was colonized by values of the Western world that do not coincide with the reality of this country. So you can even go through a canon of beauty, let's say, that people here are not tall and blonde, and if you have an ideal of beauty that people have to be tall and blonde to be beautiful, because other than pictures you see imported from the metropolis and the magazines you have, and then if you're short and dark-haired or black, and there's a frustration to me. I think that one of the roles of revolution is to create new myths. Myths that are in agreement with the society.
What kind of myths are writers creating in Cuba?
There are two types of writers, huh? There are writers who destroy myths, who try to find what's behind the myth, and writers and artists who construct myths. Let's say the Western. Let's say in the United States you created the myth of the Western, the cowboy. And then there are other people who destroyed the myth of the cowboy. I think the cultures are based on myths of that sort. Or the myth of the businessman. Well, here you have the values, I would say, if you don't want to call them myths, values of the revolutionary, you know? Being part of society, of being creative, of not being selfish, etc. Those are, let's say, the myth of the society. You could be embodied in Che. The fact that today the Che has become an international myth instead of Napoleon or Henry Ford, I mean, that is power of the third world.
New values or myths are clearly shown in one of the most important arts, that of poster making. Solidarity within Cuba is promoted by one of the biggest campaigns yet, the Zafra de las 10 Millones. It is a matter of honor, said Castro, to fight and win the battle to harvest 10 million tons of sugar. Manufactured by the Committee for the Organization of the Revolution, the posters fill a need for psychedelic color in the young and provide a much-needed form of mass art. They also advertise current foreign films and those of the progressive Cuban National Film Board. Besides solidarity at home, the posters foster identification with the Third World, Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America. The new myths are shown in such symbolic posters as the revolutionary in the arms of the Buddha and the film camera as an instrument of revolution. The biggest influence on the graphic artists has been painter Raoul Martinez. His colorful comic book style that is loved by Cubans is a reflection of the revolution that Martinez went through in his private life, which he says, before the revolution, was like his paintings, abstract and very gray. The change began and developed after he was affected by the simple heroic drawings painted on the doors of the peasants. He decided to learn to draw and begin all over again like a child. Raoul and all other artists in Cuba hang their paintings in rotating exhibitions at the National Museum, where the people are taught how to appreciate art in a small room at entrance. When the paintings are not in the gallery, they might be in one of the art and poster exhibitions traveling about the country. It is almost impossible to buy a piece of art or sculpture in Cuba. If they don't belong to all the people, then they don't belong to anyone. And at the moment, you can't be an amateur painter because there just aren't enough supplies to go around. If you are a professional, then your materials are supplied by the Artists and Writers Union. But even then, specific colors and materials are sometimes difficult to come by. Some artists complain because they can't work in plastics. Raoul Martinez answers, "A beautiful woman still looks beautiful in a $2 dress." One of the most beautiful stories of the love and dedication to art comes from Cuba's prima ballerina Alicia Alonzo. She was told a few years ago that she would have to give up dancing to save her sight. She is now almost blind and still dancing.
In what way has the revolution been good for classical ballet?
For the Ballet de Cuba?
Yes.
I must tell you, before the Ballet de Cuba was all in our shoulder, all the artistic and the expense was all, we have to cover it.
Yes.
And we have to pay for the theater, for the orchestra, for the costumes and everything that takes a ballet company, plus the salary of the dancers. And this we could only take it with artwork. And what I earned in the outside of Cuba when I danced with several of the companies, professional, and with Fernando Alonso, the director of the company, with his classes here, where we opened a private school, and he was teacher and director of the company and director of the school. And with this, we tried to maintain a ballet company, which we think, and we always wanted for Cuba. We think that a country needs culture, and we worked very hard in the United States for a long time, and we did help in the we hope, in the develop of the ballet in the United States, and we wanted to do it in Cuba very much. All our life, we thought this was the best thing, and we know it's the best thing. Because by giving to your country, you give to everyone, to the whole world, when you're working in anything that is good for the human being. And the difference now it is that we have not to worry about anything that has to do with the material, like money or the theater, if it's in good condition, or getting the orchestra. All this is given to the ballet. Our worries now, it is to develop good dancers, to develop a good company artistically, to think the next step towards the future artistically, but not worries at all about financial matters, which that give us a tremendous freedom for work. But the only trouble is always the husband in Cuba. They're protesting about the dancers because every time they open the ice box, they don't find anything but toe shoes hanging all over it to keep them cool.
The crowd queuing up in front of the National Broadcasting Company is a small sample of the attention Cubans give to the arts. The same crowd could be seen pouring into a National Ballet production of Romeo and Juliet, a very positive result of a shortage of consumer goods and not many televisions in the country. Many of the television sets that exist remain in a broken-down condition. Since they were originally bought in the United States, the blockade makes it impossible to obtain spare parts. And the new sets that are being imported from Poland are being used extensively in the schools as an aid to teaching. There is also an experiment to place televisions in the parks of Oriente province so that all can watch. As well as the educational channel, there is also a variety channel which broadcasts everything from Castro's famous marathon speeches to baseball games of equal duration.
Nos vamos para el cañaveral, nos vamos para el cañaveral. Se queda la huelga de aquel que no pueda, que otros planes hay que impulsar, y así sudando se dice, así sudando se dice, van los 10 millones y un grano menos de 10. Dijeron tu mochila vete a preparar, no vayas a olvidarte de un par de guantes, una enguatada y pide el pehuelo para los dos. Nos vamos para el cañaveral, nos vamos para el cañaveral. La zafra me espera, la zafra te espera, palabras de cubanos que van y así sudando se dice, así sudando se dice.
The interior of Cuba, like the remote provinces, once illiterate and ignored by governments, is undergoing the biggest revolution of all in an effort to educate and raise the cultural level of the masses. In small villages such as this one in the hills of Escambre, the theater group of Sergio Corriere spends from 15 days to 3 months camping anywhere they can set up shop. Here they use an abandoned sugar mill. The plays that are performed involve audience participation. And after the first play, the actors spend time in the homes of the peasants, acting out mime, putting on puppet shows, and discussing the problems of the peasants. In the play you're about to see, 3 counter-revolutionaries are caught by a young soldier. Ordered to kill them by his commander, he answers that he will do so because he is ordered, but not voluntarily. A discussion follows in which the soldier is told of the crimes of the bandits. He becomes very emotional and wants to kill them immediately. Whether he kills them or not is left for the audience to decide. The director explained his personal feelings, that the soldier should not shoot when he has his hot blood, but he should kill them for the rational reason of preserving the revolution. A very real ethical problem for Cubans is reflected in this. A very subtle kind of responsibility is being taught, because what it is saying is that you can't kill someone just because you don't like him, and then explain it away by announcing that he was a counter-revolutionary.
¿Qué hacemos? Yo creo, niño. El único que cree algo aquí soy yo. Niño, nos van a freír. Quizás si no peleamos. ¿Y qué hacemos entonces? No sé, lo presentan batalla. A lo mejor tienen clemencia. A lo mejor no. ¡Cállese la boca, coño! Déjenme pensar. Aquí nos parten seguro, niño. Allá por lo menos hay esperanza. Ya te dije que allá nos fusilan, come mierda. Si no tuviéramos muertos, quién sabe. Pero a nosotros no fusilan. Oigan bien todos. Oigan bien, están rodeados. ¡No tienen escape! Si no se rinden, quedan. Vamos a darle 5 minutos para que lo piensen. 2. Niño, dale el fusil al mierda ese. Pero niño, dáselo. 1 minuto. ¡Bravo! Vamos a abrirnos paso por aquí. Calma acá, que te conviene, come mierda. Niño, de frente como si fueras un hombre, coño. ¡Ay, rápido! ¡No, rápido! ¡No disparen! ¡Por aquí! ¡Rápido! ¡Rápido, coño!
The arts are assured continuity in form at least, because in spite of, and perhaps even because of, the economic shortage, Fidel Castro had the foresight to see that man does not live by bread alone. He suggested the building of Cubanacan, the Havana Art Institute designed by architect Ricardo Porro in 1962. Music, dance, theater, and the plastic arts, all housed in separate buildings, are studied by 800 students between the ages of 7 and 18. Students are gathered from all over Cuba on the basis of their talent. Children from families who would have been at one time too poor to send them now have a chance. Ballet students, for instance, are tested by dancers from the National Ballet Company who tour the country looking for new talent. The normal school system does not yet have a strong program to introduce children to the plastic arts, partly because of a teacher shortage in those subjects and partly for economic reasons. In the Art Institute itself, only the best pieces of sculpture and paintings are kept. The others are broken down and reused or painted over. The students who come here stay for as long as 8 years, sharing the community around the school and living in homes once owned by the rich. Their music school and dining facilities are part of a former plush golf course. The school is celebrated for its opportunity, its beauty, and monastic setting. The only complaint made about it is one that has been applied to Cuba's whole school system. It is very regimented. Some people feel it is just a little too disciplined for the minds of young artists. Perhaps this atmosphere is reflected in their work. There is talk that 1971 will be the beginning of a new, softer policy on the students. In the last 10-year plan, they say, it has been a necessary part of the revolution. Said one man as he watched the young dancers, perhaps a little wistfully, "It is for these children that we made this revolution."